samsaradava nalalidaloka tranaya karuna guna ganatvam praptasya kalyana gunanavasya vande guru shri charanaravindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyan Manasorasena Romancha Kampa Shutaranga Baju Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityananam Shingaradhan Mandira Marjanado Yuktasya Bhaktam Saniyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvida Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swadana Triptan Haribaksha Sangram Kritraiva Triptim Bhajata Sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Radhika Madhava Yudhapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupa Namnam Pratikshanasvadanalolupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Nikunjayo no rati kheli sedhai Yayali bir yukti rapekshaniyai Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam. Sakshadaritvena samasashatre uktastathabha yateva sadvir. Kinto praborya priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi. Jayam stuvam stasa yasatri sadyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinam. 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 Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastatya Deshatadine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Chaitanya Nityananda, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha, Nilamadava Radha, Nilamadava Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe, Jai Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
अवचरण भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। इसको प्रतिष्ठा विधि समस्त प्रकचर वैष्णव शिरोमणि पतित पावन श्रील प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय। श्री गौर गुरु वर्गापति उद्धार की जय। स्वरूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ जी को परबत दास सतगोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नाम आचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत गुरु वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री देव राधा शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रभु नाम संकीर्तन के जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम सच्चिदानंद श्रीमान गुरु चैतन्य महाप्रभु गुरु हरि महावरण अवतार की जय। गुरु के रत्न प्रधान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। युग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। फ्रेंड्स ने तो बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिष्य राधा कृष्ण गोकुल राधा कुंज समुकुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। जय शिव शिष्य राधा माधव की जय। शिष्य मायापुर एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण शिष्य गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। शिष्य जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनश्य कर हरे भगवान की जय। गंगा माई जमुना माई की पुरुष महारानी वृंद देवी भक्त देवी की जय। श्रीमती राधा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौर हरि परमानंद। All glories to some Lord. All glories to some Lord. All glories to some Lord. All glories, glories to Shri Shri Guru. Namaste, Namaste, Narayana. Namaste, Namaste, Narayana.
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी जितो मारा शरण लोय तारा वंचा पूरा न होय कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोराए अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास नयने हरिवो सदा जुगल रूपरासी एई निवेदना धारो साखीर अनुगाता कोरो सेवा अधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्णा दासे कोए जीना मोरा होए। श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी। श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी। जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी। नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल। नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to attend the service of Shri Radha. Whoever takes shelter of his wish is fulfilled. Bestow mercy upon him, make him resident over Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan town. Thus, within my vision, I will always build beautiful customs of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavya Damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own man servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha, Govind, Shmantos, Pranvindri. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Chastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Darpanam Pavamada Nivapanam Shri Chandra Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Jayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nina Sarva Shaktis Yatrarpitani Amitta Shmarani Nakala Durdaiva Samya Jani Nanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishuna Amani Namana Dena Kirtaniya Sadahari Radhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitamba Jagarisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahaitu Twai Ainandatanu Kinkaram Patitamam Bisame Babam Budau Kripaya Tavapar Pankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galorashrudharaya Vadanam Gadagadharudaya Gira Pulakar Chitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishyati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakusha Pravis Sunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahirame Asli Savapadaratam Pinastumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Chatata Thava Vidadatulam Pato Matpranatastu Saivana Param Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahabaranaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Gaur. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of what the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is a prime benediction for humanity at large. Because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon, it is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Here some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end with the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri 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 Krishna Kam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods and Lord Shiva and Brahman to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. Blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. Give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often invades as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the fatherless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10.
To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter.
It is also an offense to be irritated while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let's offer our most humble
Vaishnava Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditions. So as Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Sutani. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Padijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Itinamini Shri Varsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gurvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshavairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Rasambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Guruvir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhaumashri Jagannathayate Namaha Namamanchakalpaturabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachase Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Bangur Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastato Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Vivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasni Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chentamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vrite Susurabhira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venur Karanta Ravinda Dalaya Taksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesa Sobam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Anga Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranay Keli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendri Rittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastukoti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Sampraptya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktaryameva Nigamas Suvanti Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavita Bistabirya Eva Nijarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amena Tistan Nana Avatar Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visayaveda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham tamaham bhajami. Ananda chinmaya rasat mataya manasu ya praninam patifulam smaratam upetya lilaya tena bhuvanani jaya yajasram govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Golokanamni nichitamni tale chitasya devi mahesu haridama sute sutesu te te prabhava nichaya vihitascha yena govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shististati pralaya sadhava saktireka chayeva yasya bhuvanani vivarti durga ichhanurupam apiyasya chestate sa govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shiram yata dadi vikara visesa yogat sanjayate nahitata pritakasti hetu ya sambhutam apitata samapaitikar govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Departsadeva hitasantaram abhyupetya Dipayate vivita hetu samanudharana yastadrik eva hicha vishnutaya vibhati govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yakarna narna vajale bhajati sma yoga nidram ananta jagadanda saromakopa adhara shaktim avalambya param swamurtim govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yasyaika nisvasita kalamatavalamya jivanti loma vilaja jagadanda nata Ishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalavisheso Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Basmanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvadatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purusham tamaham bhajami. Agnir mahiga ganamambu marudisascha kalastatatma manasiti jagatrayani yasmad bhavanti vibhavanti visanti yamcha Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yaschaksuresa savita sakala grahanam raja samasta suramurti rasesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Dharmota papa nichaya sutayastapamsi Brahma dikita patagava deyascha jiva yadata matsa vibhava prakata prabhava Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yastrindra gopa matavinda ahosva karma bandhana rupa phalabhajana matanoti karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajam Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi vitti vatsalya moha guru gaurava sevya bhava sanchintya tasya sadrisim tanamapurete Govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Shiyakanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo druma bhumis chintamani ganamayitvayam amritam kataganam natyam gamanam ami piransi priyasaki chidanandam jyoti param apitad aswadyam apicha sayatra shiradi bihi shavati shirabi bhyashta sumahan nime sardakyo vavrajati nahi yatra prasamayo bhaje sweta dvitam tamaham iha golakamitiyam vidantaste santakshiti virachara katipaye ishvara parama krishna satchitananda vigraha anadiradi govinda Sarvakarana Karamam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 9 Verse or text number 43. Tustam Nishamya Pitaram Lokanam Pratitam Maham Devasir Paripa Pracha Bhavan Yam Manuprichati Tustam, satisfied, Nisamya, after seeing, Pitaram, the Father, Lokanam, of the whole universe, Prapitamaham, the great-grandfather, Devarshi, the great sage Narada, Paripa Pracha, inquired, Bhavan, yourself, Yat, as it is, Ma, from me, Anuprichati, inquiring. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The process of understanding spiritual or transcendental knowledge from the realized person is not exactly like asking an ordinary question from the schoolmaster. The schoolmasters in the modern days are paid agents for giving some information, but the spiritual master is not a paid agent, nor can he impart instruction without being authorized. In the Bhagavad Gita 4:34, the process of understanding transcendental knowledge is directed as follows. Tad vidi pratipadena pariprasnena sevaya upadeksyami te jnanam ganinas tattvadarshanaha. Arjuna was advised to receive transcendental knowledge from the realized person by surrendering questions and service. In other words, pranipatena, pariprasnena, and sevaya. Receiving transcendental knowledge is not like exchanging dollars. Such knowledge has to be received by service to the spiritual master. As Brahmaji received the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him fully, similarly, one has to receive the transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master by satisfying him. The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. One cannot understand transcendental knowledge simply by becoming a grammarian. The Vedas declare, Sritasvatara Upanishad 6.23, Yasya Devi Parabhakti Yata Devi Tata Kuru Tasyaite Katitahira Takpakasante Mahatmanaha. Only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. Such relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is eternal. One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. That right there, that statement right there, defeats the Ritviks. They have made something up because of extreme frustration with the falling gurus in ISKCON. But that is no excuse for changing the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Yeah, people are frustrated when they see that so-called pure devotees fall down. It is very disturbing, especially to the disciple. However, that's no excuse for changing the philosophy. Why? Okay, we're going to find out now. One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. And one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Okay, now what does that mean, strictly obedient? Well, what is it that we promise the spiritual master at initiation? Okay, so no intoxication, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no okay, no gambling, no gambling and mental speculation. Okay, so, and then chanting minimum 16 rounds. There's no maximum, but minimum 16 good rounds every day. And there are other things also, but those are the main things that we promise. So, therefore, this is something we should strictly do every day. Chant 16 good rounds every day. At minimum, you can chant more, as many as you want. And also, the negative things, no meat, no gambling, no illicit sex, no intoxication. And also, along with that, if you're not going to eat any meat and things like that, You should only eat prasadam, what has been offered to Krishna with love and devotion according to what Krishna wants. And no intoxication means even no coffee and tea. And no illicit sex means no illicit sex. Now there's different aspects of illicit sex. So one has to learn what all those different aspects are. No talking about it, no seeing it, no desiring it, no planning for it, and no. There's a whole bunch of no's. Okay, and then no speculation. That's one of the worst things we can do, like the Mayavadis or like the Ritviks, is speculate things. Okay, so there are more extensions. Vacha Vegam, Anasakrota Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Uttara Pasta Vegam, Etan Vegam, Yovi Shaheta Dirak, Sarvam Apimam, Sasasyat. So a person who controls the words, Vacha Vegam, Manasakrota, the mind and anger, and the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. Such a person could go anywhere in the world and make disciples. So there are a lot of things that come, especially if one wants to become a guru, there's a lot of other things that become absolutely important. But for everyone, they have to follow giving up the four sinful activities and strictly chant 16 good rounds every day. And to do that, one should take rest early and wake up early. One should regulate their eating, their sleeping. All these things have to be regulated. Okay, so therefore it says, but if one does this, and the reason they would do it is because they have absolute faith in Guru and Krishna, basically in Srila Prabhupada and his representatives, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So only one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. So Krishna will give the sincere and strict disciple all the knowledge necessary to go back to Godhead. Such relationship with the disciple, between the disciple and the spiritual master, is eternal. One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. And one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Brahmaji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Narada. And similarly, Narada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa, and so on. So on until today, until the Ritviks come around and they say, well, no, Prabhupada's the last spiritual master. There are no more spiritual masters after this. So they're going against everything that the previous acharyas practiced, and Prabhupada himself. So that is a red flag, because Mahajana Yenakata Sapanta. We cannot understand the Lord or Krishna simply with being a scholar or a grammarian, as Prabhupada says, or by being expert in winning arguments, or going to this lecture, that lecture, this pundit, that pundit. No. The only way, why? Because the truth is hidden in the heart of a pure devotee. Therefore, the only way we can ascertain what is the truth is follow in the footsteps or follow the teaching of a pure devotee. Well, who is the pure devotee? It's Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas, and ultimately Krishna. So we cannot imitate them. but we can follow their instructions. And that's what we should do. So here it says, and one cannot be a bona fide authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Brahmaji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Narada, and similarly Narada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa, and so on. Therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasa. The relationship between Brahma and Narada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relationship between the cheater and the cheated. Wow, this is a huge statement by Prabhupada. Now let's see if we can understand what he's saying. When he says, therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasa. So facsimile means an imitation. So look it up. Look up the word facsimile. So it's a fact that has a similarity to something else.
Yeah, it's a copy or reproduction of an old book, manuscript, item of historical value.
Yeah, so it says, and one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to a spiritual master. Brahmaji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Narada, and similarly Narada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa, and so on. Therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasa. So we should not think of the relationship between Brahma and Narada as something ritual. It's not ritual, it's real. Narada is completely surrendered to his guru, Brahma, and Vyasa is completely surrendered to his disciple, to his guru, Narada. So then it says, therefore the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Narada, or Narada and Vyasa. The relationship between Brahma and Narada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relationship between the cheater and the cheated. So that's the main point there, that simply accepting a family guru, because it's a tradition in a family, and getting your Upanayana when you're like 7 or 8 years old is not what's being explained here. It's reality. Reality means one, like Narada, is surrendered, obedient, meek and gentle, and fully focused on pleasing Guru and Krishna. It's not a formality. It's not, I have a 50 pence string around my neck. No. So it says, the relationship between Brahma and Narada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relationship between the cheater and the cheated. That means the guru who's cheating and the disciple who's been cheated. It is clearly mentioned herewith that Narada is not only well-behaved, meek, and obedient, but also self-controlled. One who is not self-controlled, specifically in sex life, can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. There is the top criterion right there. One must have disciplinary training in controlling speaking, anger, the tongue, the mind, the belly, and the genitals. So we already mentioned that verse, Vachavega, Manasakrodavega, etc. One who has controlled the particular senses mentioned above is called a Goswami. Without becoming a Goswami, one can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. The so-called spiritual master without sense control is certainly the cheater, and the disciple of such a so-called spiritual master is the cheated. One should not think of Brahmaji as a dead great-grandfather, as we have experienced on this planet. He is the oldest great-grandfather, and he is still living. And Narada is also living. The age of the inhabitants of the Brahmaloka planet is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The inhabitants of this small planet Earth can hardly calculate even the duration of one day of Brahma. So Brahma is going to live for 311 trillion and so many billion years. We can't even fathom that. We can't even figure out what that means. It's such a lifespan. So he's not an ordinary grandfather who's dead. He's living, and so is Narada. Okay, so therefore the great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Well, that's the point. The relationship between guru and disciple is most fruitful when the disciple is completely surrendered and is always offering favorable service. Just like yesterday we heard, what is pure devotional service? Anya bilasita sunyam yanakarma dhyanavrtam anukulyena krishnana silanam bhaktir uttama. It has these different components to it. Number one, that one should have no material desires. That right there is huge. No material desires. Number two, one should not be interested at all in Mayavad philosophy, neither hearing it nor reading it. But one can learn about the pitfalls of Mayavad philosophy by reading Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So you don't have to get their books and read them. You simply have to listen to the classes and read Prabhupada's purports. And number three, one must not be engaged in any fruitive activity. Well, that means business and things like that. So, however, if one performs activities and offers the result to Krishna, then one is not entangled by them. But if one calculates, well, 1 for Krishna, 2 for me. 2 for Krishna, 4 for me. 4 for Krishna, 8 for me. 8 for Krishna, 32 for me. So that type of calculation doesn't work. It has to be all for Krishna. That is, one makes a decision about having a limit to their material development. And everything above that, they offer to Krishna. So what that minimum is has to be determined in mutual agreement between the husband and wife. After that, everything else is offered to Krishna. Okay? So these things, we can't force someone to follow these things. We can only explain what happens if they do and what happens if they don't. But we have the example of Prabhupada. He went through this. He was married. He had 5 kids. He got his kids married. He educated his kids and so forth. He took care of his wife. Right? But at a certain point, he gave it all up. But it wasn't whimsically. It wasn't by putting them into anxiety, anything like that. He waited. He was like 58, 59 years old when he took sannyas. But that was after his kids were grown, they were married, and he was sure that his wife was going to be taken care of. Okay. And then number 4 is no fruitive actions. I'm sorry. No, the service has to be performed favorably for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. So this is a definition of pure devotional service. And then there's more. This it says also, Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam Tatparat Venam Nirmalam Hishikena Hishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchite. Okay, what does that mean? So Sarvapadi Vinirmuktam. One must be free of all false identifications. I am this body. This is number 1 false identification. And everything that belongs to me is mine. That's another false idea. And this is my family, this is my ethnicity, this is my race, this is my nationality, and so forth. All these are false identifications. Just like one time, there was a group in the Bay Area called the Bay Area Vaishnava Sangha Society of homosexuals. Right? So, the leader of that organization called me up. I was president of Berkeley Temple. And he said, Prabhu, do you want to serve Prabhupada and Krishna? I said, yes. He said, do you want to spread Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement? I said, yes. You want people to read Prabhupada's books and distribute them? I said, yes. He said, then you should let the Bay Area lesbian and homosexual Sangha Society hold programs in your temple. I said, well, first of all, it's not my temple. It's Prabhupada's temple, Krishna's temple. Secondly, the answer is no. He said, what? You don't want to serve Prabhupada? You don't want to spread Krishna consciousness? I said, no, yes, I do. Then how can you say no? Oh, I'll tell you why. Because of your adjectives. He said, what? What do you mean, adjectives? I said, if your society was the International Society for Krishna Consciousness to help all people become Krishna conscious, you'd be welcome. But your adjectives, you have so many adjectives that are nonsense, therefore we cannot let you. He said, I don't understand. What are you talking about? Do you want to serve Prabhupada and Krishna, or do you not want to serve him? I said, I am going to serve him by refusing to let you come into the temple with all those adjectives. Bay Area, lesbian and homosexual Sangha Society. That's, you should have just said Bay Area Sangha Society. But because you're saying, putting all those extra adjectives in, you're not allowed to have programs. Now, if you come individually without your adjectives, then we are welcome to come. But if you come in with all those adjectives and insist on having programs in the temple with all those adjectives, you're not allowed. So he said, well, you know, now I know you don't want to serve Prabhupada. I said, okay, you can say whatever you want. So, fast forward, about 2 years later, he called me up again. Now, in the meantime, those people were coming. We didn't stop them from coming, but we're not going to organize a program in the temple under their name, right? So he calls me up and said, Prabhu, you have to help me. I said, okay, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to send a brahmachari because I'm dying of AIDS and I need someone to do some cleanup and cooking and things like that. I said, okay, I'll send you this very nice lady. She's, she'll clean, she'll cook, she'll even read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam to him. He said, I don't want any woman. I want a brahmachari. I said, I'm not going to send you a brahmachari. I'm going to send you a woman who will do all these things. He said, don't you understand? I don't want a woman. I said, no, I perfectly understand why you don't want a woman, but you're not going to get a brahmachari. So you say they never give up, right? So then he died. He died. So the upadhis are all those adjectives. Now, it doesn't have to be the same adjectives. There can be other adjectives. Like, I am Andhra Pradesh, or I am Telangana, or I am this, or I am that. Right? There's so many adjectives. So those are all upadhis, false identifications. So sarvapadhi vinirmukta tat parat vena nirmalam. So that means that free from all kinds of material designations, or free from all desires except the desire to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by the sole purpose of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one has to be uncontaminated by giving up all material desires and maintaining only the desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And also uncontaminated by Mayavad philosophy and speculation, and uncontaminated by fruitive activities, and having purified senses free from all designations, and recognizing who is the master of the senses, Lord Krishna, then one can render service to satisfy the spiritual master. And this is called devotional service or bhakti. Then one can render service to satisfy the Lord and spiritual master. And this is called bhakti yoga. So here we have two verses. One is Narada Pancharatra by Narada Muni, and the other one is by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that explain what is pure devotional service. And also, there's a saying, again from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Krishnarte akilam chesta. Every endeavor should be to please Krishna. And it says, in a letter, 1970, May 1970, Srila Prabhupada translates this phrase, Krishnarte akila chesta, and cites his own case of leaving peaceful Vrindavana to manage a big society in his old age. In other words, okay, tell him to please keep quiet. It's on? Okay. So, this is pure devotional service. That's what we're aiming for. That's what Prabhupada wants us to do. That's what Krishna wants us to do. And if we do it, he's going to show his gratitude in many different ways to us. So, therefore it says in the Bhakti Yoga book, he says, the cultivation of Krishna consciousness is not material. The Lord has three general energies, namely the external energy, the internal energy, and the marginal energy. The living entities are called marginal energy, and the material cosmic manifestation is the action of the external or material energy. Then there is the spiritual world, which is a manifestation of the internal energy. The living entities, who are called marginal energy, perform material activities when acting under the inferior external energy. And when they engage in activities under the internal spiritual energy, their activities are called Krishna conscious. This means that those who are great souls or great devotees do not act under the spell of the material energy, but act instead under the protection of the spiritual energy. Any activities done in devotional service or in Krishna consciousness are directly under the control of the spiritual energy. In other words, energy is a sort of strength, and this strength can be spiritualized by the mercy of both the bona fide spiritual master and Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Lord Chaitanya states that it is a fortunate person who comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. To one who is serious about spiritual life, Krishna gives the intelligence to come in contact with a bona fide spiritual master. And then, by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. So here you are. These are two main points. When one is desiring spiritual, let's say, knowledge and spiritual activity in their life, Krishna in the heart understands that and sends a spiritual master to such a person, who makes it available that they can meet a bona fide spiritual master. And then, if one accepts a spiritual master, then they can make genuine spiritual advancement. If the spiritual master is bona fide, they can make genuine spiritual advancement in contact with the bona fide spiritual master. And then, by the grace of the spiritual master, one becomes advanced in Krishna consciousness. In this way, the whole jurisdiction of Krishna consciousness is under the spiritual energy, Krishna and the spiritual master. So this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita, in 9th chapter, Mahatmanas tumam partha daivim pakritim asritaha vajanti ananya manaso yatva buddhanim avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So, such devotees who are not deluded, they are under the protection of the divine nature, under the protection of Krishna. So it says in this verse, the description of the Mahatma is clearly given. The first sign of the Mahatma is that he is already situated in a divine nature. He is not under the control of material nature. And how is this affected? That is explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, at once becomes freed from the control of material nature. That is the qualification. Daivihi esa gunamayi mama maya duratya mam evaye prapadyante mayamitam tarantite. Krishna says, Daivihi esa gunamayi mama maya duratya. It's impossible to overcome my material nature. But one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it, or easily become free from it. So, that, Prabhupada says, is the verse that's the solution to all problems of life. That one verse is the solution to all problems of life. And so, this Daivihi esa gunamaya mama maya duratya. When he says mama maya duratya, this material nature belongs to me, and it's impossible to overcome it. You can do whatever you want. You're not going to overcome. You're not going to overcome birth, old age, disease, and death. People are trying to overcome birth by contraceptives, but it hasn't worked. The world population is still increasing. It might be decreasing in some countries, but it's increasing in other countries. You want to stop old age? You can't stop it. You want to stop disease? You can't stop it. You want to stop death? You can't stop it. But what are the crazy scientists trying to do? They're trying to stop birth, old age, disease, and death. Something that's impossible to do, they're trying to do it. This is how crazy people have become. This is how illusioned they are. And they teach people, they promise people, we're right on the cusp of immortality. Yeah, nonsense. They're all cheaters. And the people that believe them have the same cheating tendency. Therefore, they accept to be cheated because they have a cheating propensity. Therefore, they're attracted to the big cheaters. Okay, so then to go further on, something very interesting in this book, The Laws of Nature. Prabhupada explains extensively bad karma. So if you want to know what bad karma is, you should definitely read the chapter in this book called Bad Karma. And we're going to read a few parts of it. It's a long chapter. It's the longest chapter in the book. And it goes on for many pages. But it's very instructive. And let's see what it says. I'm not going to read all of it because it's very long. Yeah. I'm going to talk about people that steal money. It's the people that cheat to get money. So it says, when a man earns money by unfair means and maintains his family and himself with that money, the money is enjoyed by many members of the family, but he alone goes to hell and suffers the resultant sinful reactions accrued from such a violent and illicit life. For example, if a man secures some money by killing someone, and with that money maintains his family, those who enjoy the black money earned by him are also partially responsible and also sent to hell. Whoa. But he who is the leader is especially punished. The money he earned is left in this world, and he takes only the sinful reaction. In this world also, if a person acquires some money by murdering someone, the family is not hanged, although its members are sinfully contaminated. But the man who commits the murder and maintains his family is himself hanged as a murderer. The direct offender is more responsible for the sinful activities than the indirect enjoyer. The great learned scholar Chanakya Pandit says, therefore, that whatever one has in his possession had better be spent for the cause of Sat, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because one cannot take his possessions with him. They remain here, and they will be lost. Either we leave the money, or the money leaves us, but we will be separated. The best use of money, as long as it is within our possession, is to spend it to acquire and propagate Krishna consciousness. Thus, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer of kinsmen is put into a hellish condition to suffer for his sinful activities, like a man who has lost his wealth. The example set herein is that the sinful person suffers just like a man who has lost his wealth. The human form of body is achieved by the conditioned soul after many, many births, and is a very valuable asset. Instead of using this life to get liberation, if one uses it simply for the purpose of maintaining his so-called family, and therefore performs foolish and unauthorized action, he is compared to a man who has lost his wealth, and who, upon losing it, laments. When wealth is lost, there is no use lamenting, but as long as there is wealth, one has to utilize it properly, and thereby gain eternal profit. It may be argued that when a man leaves his money earned by sinful activities, he also leaves his sinful activities here with his money. But it is especially mentioned herein that by superior arrangement, although the man leaves behind his sinfully earned money, he carries the effect of it. When a man steals some money, if he is caught and agrees to return it, he is not freed from the criminal punishment. By the law of the state, even though he returns the money, he has to undergo the punishment. Similarly, the money earned by a criminal process may be left by the man when dying, but by superior arrangement, he carries with him the effect, and therefore he has to suffer hellish life. Whoa. You can see why it's the longest part of this book, and it goes on for many, many pages. I'm not going to read all of it. It would take about an hour to read the whole thing, but you should read this and see what it says. But this last thing is devastating, because it says, when a man steals some money, if he is caught and agrees to return it, he is not freed from the criminal punishment. by the law of the state. Even though he returns the money, he has to undergo the punishment. Similarly, the money earned by a criminal process may be left by the man when dying, but by superior arrangement, he carries with him the effect, and therefore he has to suffer hellish life. Haribol, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions?
That statement that because money is temporary, the only purpose of it is to use it in the propagation of Sat, which is the
Yes.
Krishna consciousness.
Yes. Everything above your minimal needs should be used in Krishna's service. So, there's an example, a good example of Ambarish Prabhu. He's the heir of Henry Ford, right? I think he's the second or third generation heir. Now, let's say, when the stock is going good, he has more money. When the stock is not so good, he has less money. But he promised Prabhupada that he would build that big temple, the TOVP, Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. So, and he's doing it, and he's put up about, I would say, $30 million. The cost of that place is going to be over $100 million, maybe up to $120 million. So, he has invested, I think he has about $80 million, I think. But, it's in stocks, and they go up and down. So, and he spent most of his latter years, he's still alive, of course, but, at least he spent like 20 years now trying to build that temple. It's a long time. And he'll do it. He'll finish it, maybe this year or in 2 years it'll be finished. And he will have used a huge amount of his wealth for it. So there's an example, right? By the way, he does live very simply. He's not lavish in his lifestyle. And he's completely engaged now. Before it was a little less, but now it's completely engaged in spreading Krishna consciousness one way or the other, and especially finishing that temple. So, such a person that Prabhupada cultivated, he cultivated him, not because of his money, but because he had a genuine desire to serve. Right? And the same way Prabhupada cultivated George Harrison and the other Beatles. Of course, George was the one that benefited from Prabhupada's association the most. Now, George did significant service for Prabhupada, significant. He gave him the Bhaktivinoda Manor. He helped maintain the first temple on Berry Place. And then he donated so Prabhupada could print the Krishna book. And he was always very helpful, always helping the devotees. So, of course, at one point, some of the devotees did some horrible things that really got him upset. But still, he didn't stop helping. So we have to understand that what is the actual purpose of life? The purpose of life is not to stay in the material world. What is Krishna's purpose? His purpose is that all his sons and daughters come back to him. Right? Just like a father would like to see all his sons and daughters stay faithful to him, father and mother, and help them. Just like they took care of their kids in their youth and raised them. And so in their old age, the kids should take care of them, right? That's a normal process. So Krishna, we're all Krishna's praja, and Krishna wants us all to come back to Godhead where we belong. Therefore, he gives Bhagavad Gita. He comes himself. He sends other saints, and then ultimately comes as Lord Chaitanya, the most merciful Supreme Personality Godhead, where he's not making the process hard. He's making it simple, very simple, and very fun, and full of bliss. So we should understand what is the purpose of life, how to achieve it, and understand what our real destiny is, which is to be free of birth, death, old age, and disease. Go back to Godhead. If we understand these things, that we actually have an eternal soul. The soul is eternal. It's not going to die, but it's going to suffer because of false identification, because of the upadhis. So, therefore, once we become free of those upadhis, those false identifications, and we get the right identification as the eternal servant of the Lord, then we will use everything in the service of the Lord, because we've understood who we are exactly and what is our relationship with Krishna. Until we come to those conclusions, we're half and half. And many people don't come to any conclusion at all. They're nothing, right? They're just victims of Maya. But if we remain in a position half and half, we're never going to be really satisfied. We're only really satisfied when we go all the way. Then, again, we're not satisfied, but not because of our own shortcomings, because we want to help others also make this successful trajectory of going back to Godhead. Haribol. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. What time is it? 7:16. Good. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Satma Bando Mui Sabadana Mate Janara Prasadevai E Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Oya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati ye prasade pure sarva asa. Chakshudan dilaje janmi janmi Prabhu se. Chakshudan dilaje janmi janmi Prabhu se. Divya Gyani de Prakasita. Divya Gyani de Prakasita. Shri Guru Prema Bhakti Chaha Hoite Avidya Vinasajate. Prema Bhakti Chaha Hoite Avidya Vinasajate. Prema Bhakti Chaha Hoite Avidya Vinasajate. Vediga Janara Charito. Vediga Janara Charito. Vediga Janara Charito. Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Lokanath Lokera Janila. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Haha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Haha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Haha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha Mori Padachaya. Beya Yusachi Bhuvana. Ebeyas Kusikti Bhuvana. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura. Nitya Gaura Premanande Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikacharya Astatara Satarasi Simad Testavad Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Rantakoti Vaishnavin Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Prem Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the Symbol Lord, all glories to the Symbol Lord, all glories to the Symbol Lord, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gaura Premanande, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, please be merciful to us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya. Namaste, says